The East Riding of Yorkshire, or simply East Yorkshire, is a local government district with unitary authority status, and a ceremonial county of England. For ceremonial purposes, the county also includes the city of Kingston upon Hull, which is a separate unitary authority. It is named after the historic East Riding of Yorkshire, which also constituted a ceremonial and administrative county until 1974. From 1974 to 1996, the area of the modern East Riding of Yorkshire constituted the northern part of the non-metropolitan county of Humberside. The landscape consists of a crescent of low chalk hills, the Yorkshire Wolds, surrounded by the low-lying fertile plains of Holderness and the Vale of York. The Humber estuary and North Sea mark its southern and eastern limits. Archaeological investigations have revealed artifacts and structures from all historical periods since the last ice age. There are few large settlements and no industrial centres. The area is administered from the ancient market and ecclesiastical town of Beverley. Christianity is the religion with the largest following in the area, and there is a higher than average percentage of retired people in residence. The economy is mainly based on agriculture, and this, along with tourism, has contributed to the rural and seaside character of the riding. These aspects are also reflected in the places of interest to visitors and major landmarks, which include historic buildings, nature reserves and the Wolds Way long-distance footpath. The open and maritime aspects and lack of major urban developments have also led to the county being allocated relatively high targets for the generation of energy from renewable sources. Major sporting and entertainment venues are concentrated in Kingston upon Hull, while the seaside and market towns support semi-professional and amateur sports clubs and provide seasonal entertainment for visitors. Bishop Burton is the site of an agricultural college, and Hull provides the region's only university. On the southern border, close to Hull, the Humber Bridge spans the Humber estuary to enable the A15 to link Hethel with Barton upon Humber in North Lincolnshire. History. When the last glacial period ended, the hunter-gatherers of the Paleolithic period followed the animal herds across the land between continental Europe and Britain. Then, as conditions continued to improve and vegetation became more able to support a greater diversity of animals, the annual range of seasonal movement by Mesolithic communities decreased, and people became more fixed to particular localities. Until about 6000 BC, Mesolithic people appear to have exploited their environment as they found it. As communities came to rely on a smaller territorial range and as population levels increased, attempts began to be made to modify or control the natural world. In the Great Wold Valley, pollen samples of Mesolithic date indicate that the forest cover in the area was being disturbed and altered by man, and that open grasslands were being created. The Yorkshire Wolds became a major focus for human settlement during the Neolithic period, as they had a wide range of natural resources. The oldest monuments found on the Wolds are the Neolithic long barrows and round barrows. Two earthen long barrows in the region are found at Fordon, on Willoughby Wold, and at Killam, both of which have radiocarbon dates of around 3700 BC. From around 2000 to 800 BC, the people of the Bronze Age built the 1400 Bronze Age round barrows that are known to exist on the Yorkshire Wolds. These are found both in isolation and grouped together to form cemeteries. Many of these sites can still be seen as prominent features in the present-day landscape. By the later Bronze Age, an open, cleared landscape predominated on the Wolds. It was used for grazing and also for arable cultivation. The wetlands on either side of the Wolds in the River Hull Valley, Holderness and the Vale of York were also being used for animal rearing at this time. In the Iron Age there were further cultural changes in the area. There emerged the distinctive local tradition known as the Arras culture, named after a site at Arras, near Market Weighton. There are similarities between the chariot burials of the Arras culture and groups of Latin burials in northern Europe, where the burial of carts was also practiced. The area became the kingdom of the tribe known as the Parisii. After invading Britain in 43 AD, the Romans crossed the Humber estuary in 71 AD to invade the Northumbrian territory of the Parisii tribe. From their bridgehead at Pettua area they travelled northwards and built roads along the Wolds to Derventio, present-day Malton, and then westwards to the River Ouse, where they built the fort of Eboracum. There is evidence of extensive use of the light soils of the Wolds for grain farming in the Roman era. Several Roman villas which were the centres of large agricultural estates have been identified around Langton and Rudston. In the low-lying lands on either side of the Wolds there was an increase in the number of settlements between 500 BC and 500 AD as the land became drier and more accessible due to a fall in sea level. The lower-lying land was used for stock breeding. During the last years of Roman occupation, Anglo-Saxon raiders were troubling the area, and by the second half of the 5th century, settlement by Anglian invaders was taking place in East Yorkshire. Village names containing the elements ing, Ingham or Ham are Anglian settlement names. As Christianity became established in the area from the 7th century onwards, several cemeteries like the one at Garton on the Wolds show evidence of the abandonment of pagan burial practices. In 867 AD, the Great Danish Army captured the Anglian town of York, and the remnants of the army settled in Yorkshire from 876 AD when their leader Halfdan shared out the land among them. Scandinavian settlements have names including the elements Byrnthorpe. Scandinavian rule in the area came to an end in 954 AD with the death of their ruler Eric Bloodaxe. After the Norman conquest of England by William the Conqueror in 1066 AD, the land in the East Riding was granted to followers of the new Norman king and ecclesiastical institutions. When some of the northern earls rebelled, William retaliated with the harrying of the north, which laid waste many East Riding villages. The land was then distributed among powerful barons, such as the Count of Aumil in Holderness and the Percy family in the Wolds and the Vale of York. These lay lords and ecclesiastical institutions, including the monasteries, continued to improve and drain their holdings throughout the Middle Ages to maximize the rents they could charge for them. In the mid-16th century, Henry VIII of England dissolved the monasteries, resulting in the large areas of land owned by Moabbey, Bridlington Priory and other monastic holdings being confiscated. The Crown subsequently sold these large tracts of land into private ownership, along with the land already belonging to lay owners. They formed some of the vast estate holdings which continued to exist in the riding until the 20th century. The 18th and 19th centuries saw first the expansion of canals and then the construction of rail links. The River Derwent was canalised as far upstream as Malton, and was linked to Pocklington by the cutting of the Pocklington Canal. Other canals were cut to join the towns of Beverley and Driffield to the River Hull, which was also improved to aid navigation. The Market Waiting Canal connected the town directly to the Humber estuary. An early rail link was constructed between Filey and Bridlington in 1847, and the Malton to Driffield Railway was the first to cross the Wolds in 1853. These routes primarily served the agricultural community in helping to get their products to the expanding industrial markets in the West Riding of Yorkshire and to the port of Hull for e-export. The rail links served also to transport holiday makers to the expanding coastal resorts of Bridlington, Hornsey and Withensea. The canals and canalisation of some of the rivers helped to aid drainage in such of the low-lying ill-drained areas that then still existed. The landscape in the East Riding had changed little since the enclosure of the open fields in the 18th and 19th centuries, except for the removal of some hedgerows to allow for the use of large agricultural machinery in the 20th century. Geography. Location as a ceremonial county, the East Riding of Yorkshire borders North Yorkshire, South Yorkshire and Lincolnshire, and includes the city of Kingston upon Hull, which is a separate unitary authority. As a district, the East Riding borders North East Lincolnshire, beyond the Humber estuary, North Lincolnshire, beyond the Humber and on land, Hull, Doncaster, Selby, York, Rydale and Scarborough. Geologically the East Riding district is split into three parts. The western part is the eastern section of the Vale of York with the southern extension into the Humber head levels. In this area there is a belt of sandstones overlain by glacial and lake deposits formed at the close of the last ice age. The middle part is the Yorkshire Wolds, a chalk formation which extends from the Humber at North Ferriby to the coast at Flamborough Head, a chalk headland. The southeast of the district is the low-lying, coastal plain of Holderness, which faces east to the North Sea, and to the south drains into the Humber estuary. South of Flamborough Head is Bridlington, which features several beaches, and at the far southeast of the district is the Spurn Peninsula. Before the last ice age, the eastern coastline of the area was located along the eastern foot of the Yorkshire Wolds, where remnants of beaches have been discovered. The North Sea ice sheet deposited huge amounts of boulder clay as it retreated, and this subsequently formed a wet and swampy area which became the Plain of Holderness. Another ice sheet in the Vale of York retreated at the same time, leaving thick glacial deposits and two prominent moraines to the west of the Wolds. These Vale of York deposits also formed wetlands. The Wolds themselves were largely ice-free, well-drained, chalk uplands. Gradually the tundra conditions that had existed as the ice retreated gave way to vegetation that could support grazing fauna. Because a lot of water was still locked in the northern ice sheets, sea level was much lower than in the present day, and an area of land stretched eastwards to the Low Countries. Landscape: the Wolds area takes the form of an elevated, gently rolling plateau, cut by numerous deep, steep-sided, flat-bottomed valleys of glacial origin. The chalk formation of the hills provides exceptionally good drainage, with the result that most of these valleys are dry. Surface water is quite scarce throughout the Wolds. At Flamborough Head the Wolds rise up to form high chalk cliffs, where there are water-worn caves and stacks along the shore. Flamborough Headland is designated a heritage coast. Coastal erosion around Flamborough Head has led to visitors being warned by the Humber Coast Guard to be very careful on coastal paths. The Holderness landscape is dominated by deposits of teal, boulder clays and glacial lake clays. These were deposited during the Devensian glaciation. The glacial deposits form a more or less continuous lowland plain which has some peat-filled depressions which mark the presence of former lake beds. There are other glacial landscape features such as drumlin mounds, ridges and kettle holes scattered throughout the area. The well-drained glacial deposits provide fertile soils that can support intensive arable cultivation. Fields are generally large and bounded by drainage ditches. There is very little woodland in the area, and this leads to a landscape that is essentially rural but very flat and exposed. The Holderness coastline suffers the highest rate of coastal erosion in Europe, 2 meters a year on average, or 2 million tons of material a year. Some of this is transported by longshore drift, with about 3% of material being deposited at Spurn Head Spit, to the south. The coastline has retreated noticeably in the last 2,000 years, with many former settlements now flooded, particularly Ravensrod and Ravenspurn, which was a major port until its destruction in the 14th century. Erosion is an ongoing concern in the area. The East Riding of Yorkshire Council has been carrying out cliff erosion defences between Sewerby and Kilnsea since 1951. The Holderness area drains mostly into the Humber, and the eponymous River Hull drains the area north of Hull. The western part of the district in the Vale of York borders on and is drained by the River Derwent. The landscape is generally low-lying and flat, although minor ridges and glacial moraines provide some variations in topography. Where there are dry sandy soils, there are remnants of historic heathlands and ancient semi-natural woodlands. Arable fields dominate the land cover of the area and grasslands are infrequent. There are very few flood meadows left, although some significant areas remain on the lower reaches of the River Derwent. Climate: the East Riding generally has cool summers and relatively mild winters. Weather conditions vary from day to day as well as from season to season. The latitude of the area means that it is influenced by predominantly westerly winds with depressions and their associated fronts, bringing with them unsettled and windy weather, particularly in winter. Between depressions there are often small mobile anticyclones that bring periods of fair weather. In winter, anticyclones bring cold, dry weather. In summer, the anticyclones tend to bring dry, settled conditions which can lead to drought, particularly on the Wolds. For its latitude, this area is mild in winter and cooler in summer due to the influence of the Gulf Stream in the northern Atlantic Ocean. Air temperature varies on a daily and seasonal basis. The temperature is usually lower at night, and January is the coldest time of the year. The two dominant influences on the climate of the area are the shelter against the worst of the moist westerly winds provided by the Pennines and the proximity of the North Sea. The Hymothorpe weather station is in the East Riding on the Yorkshire Wolds, but areas in Holderness which are lower and nearer to the sea have generally milder weather. Governance. Administrative history. The administrative division of the East Riding of Yorkshire originated in antiquity. Unlike most counties in Great Britain, which were divided anciently into hundreds, Yorkshire was divided first into 3 ridings and then into numerous wapentakes within each riding. The separate lieutenancy for the riding was established after the Restoration, and the ridings each had separate quarter sessions. For statistical purposes in the 19th century, an East Riding of Yorkshire registration county was designated, consisting of the entirety of the poor law unions of Beverley, Bridlington, Driffield, Howden, Hull, Patrington, Pocklington, Sculcoates, Skirlaw and York. A county council for the East Riding of Yorkshire was set up in 1889. Covering an administrative county which did not cover the county borough of Hull, but otherwise had the same boundaries as the historic riding. Both the administrative county and the historic lieutenancy were abolished under the Local Government Act 1972, on the 1st of April 1974, with most of the riding going to form the northern part of Humberside. The creation of this cross-Humber authority was unpopular, and this culminated in the Local Government Review in the 1990s, which saw Humberside abolished and the northern part formed 2 unitary authorities. The East Riding District was formed on 1 April 1996. The ceremonial county, the area in which the Lord Lieutenant of the East Riding of Yorkshire represents the Crown, was re-established the same day, covering Hull as well as the district. The district is entirely parished. Hull has no parishes. From 1996, Beverley had charter trustees to maintain the charter of the Borough of Beverley. These were replaced by a Beverley Town Council in 1999, and Bridlington was parished in 1999. The unparished area, consisting of the urban district of Halton Price, was divided into various parishes in 1999 and 2000. Current administration. The East Riding of Yorkshire Council is based in Beverley, in the former headquarters of Humberside County Council, and East Riding County Council before that. There are 26 wards electing a total of 67 councillors in the district. The council elects on a 4-yearly cycle with all seats up for election at the same time. It first had elections in 1995, a year before it came into its powers, as a shadow authority. Between 1995 and 2007, the council had no overall control. In the 2007 local elections, the Conservative Party gained a majority of seats, including those of the Liberal Democrat and Labour Party leaders. The council has a leader and executive system, the leader being Stephen Parnaby of the Conservatives. In the Audit Commission report covering 2007, the Council was given a 4-star rating, which places the authority as one of the best in the country. 2007 local election results. Westminster Parliamentary for representation in the Parliament of the United Kingdom. The bulk of the East Riding District is divided into 3 county constituencies: Beverley and Holderness, East Yorkshire, and Halton Price and Howden, which are all Conservative held. One of Hull's 3 borough constituencies, Kingston upon Hull, Weston Hessle, spills into the area, as does Brick and Goole. Otherwise in North Lincolnshire, all the Hull seats are Labour held. European Parliamentary. For the European Parliament, it lies within the Yorkshire and the Humber constituency, which in the May 2014 European election elected 3 UKIP, 2 Labour and 1 Conservative MEPs.